Hi, this is Brian Buckalew from Provision Studios, and today I'm going to discuss saturation, how it's used in audio. This is a direct request from one of the subscribers to the YouTube channel, where he asked if I could explain saturation, a little bit about what it is, why you would use it, and I'm more of a how guy anyway. Show me how to do something, and then we'll discuss the whys. So today I'm going to show you some instances on different audio tracks with different saturation type plugins. You can hear sort of how I use them, and we'll get into the different versions of types of saturation. Basically, you've got transistor, transformer, tube, and tape. Those are the main saturation type plugins that you'll find. That's not to say that you can't have a plugin that really wasn't meant to be a saturation plugin, and use it to saturate a track. Basically, in the digital realm, and this is just my opinion now, everything is an emulation of something that was once analog. You can say that an EQ plugin is an emulation of something that was created in the analog realm. Therefore, in a way, you can push anything through a plugin and cause saturation. Because basically what saturation was is, back in the day of analog, there were tape machines that the magnetization that was used to create some kind of artifact or some kind of harmonic saturation would get to a certain level to where you couldn't add any more of that certain plugin, or I'm sorry, that certain, whether it was a tube, you run it through some tubes, or some transistors through a console, or through some tape. You couldn't add any more, and that's where the point of saturation would be achieved. And in the digital realm, the way I like to use saturation is sort of to try to help my mixes not sound as digital. I record in the box. I use a Soundcraft Signature 22 multi-track console, but it is a hybrid, whereas it passes through the analog console, but it goes via USB cable, into my computer, where all that audio, is mixed then in the box inside of Pro Tools or whatever DAW I would use. Either way, I use a lot of saturation at times to sort of give myself more of that analog warmth. You're going to hear that a lot, not just today, but you'll hear it anytime you discuss saturation with other sound engineers or mix engineers. They'll say, "Oh, I'm going for that analog warmth that sort of that you lose in the digital realm or in the box mixing. You don't have that that real that kind of warm tone that you can get off of a tape machine or a nice analog console." And there's also the term digital harshness is sometimes equated with in-the-box mixing. Again, saturation would be a way to offset some of that digital harshness or that lack of warmth that you could get when you use an analog console. Now, I am not trying to say at all that we are able to make a in-the-box mix sound like it was recorded through a 32-track analog console. I'm not saying that is the case. What I am saying is that we have the capability to emulate those characteristics that would occur when you do use that type of analog gear. In my first example, I'm going to take a guitar track and I'm going to run it through some of my favorite saturation plugins. These are plugins that I use every day, and I do use specifically on guitar tracks. Firstly, I'm going to show you guys the audio as it was recorded. Now, this was not a dry, direct guitar. This guitar was recorded through an amp. Alright, so you can hear that's already got some tone to it. It's obviously run through a guitar amp, so it sounds like a guitar that was mic'd up, a cabinet that was mic'd up, which is exactly that's exactly what it was. All right, now you can push that with this soft tube saturation plugin. It's called the saturation knob, and it does exactly that. It saturates your audio track with this emulation. And as I increase this knob, you're going to hear the level of saturation increase, even to a point where the audio is going to start to break up. Now, you would want to be careful if you use the soft tube saturation plugin, because you can hear the level increase. So you would want to level match that by hitting your bypass. Check your level and then reduce it accordingly. That would be right about where the plugin was increasing the level. So we dropped about 4 dB. So by increasing the saturation on the soft tube, I was able to add 4 dB of level, but I wanted to offset that. I'm just trying to color the track, not create more volume. All right, let's move on. And that plugin is free if you go to Softtube's website. This next one is the Decapitator by Sound Toys. This is one of my all-time favorites. I use this on almost all my guitar buses. It really adds a lot of character to the whole bus. Today I'm just using it on the guitar track, but I want to show why I use it. I'm using this today on the N style, which is a model of the API 550. So if you have any experience or knowledge of that, that's a very popular console. It was very popular, and it still is to this day. But what I'm using it here for today is to help with the mids on the guitar. You can probably hear that this guitar is a little flat. There's not a lot of oomph to it. And why I like the Decapitator plugin is you've got these emulations down here. You've got a low cut, a high cut. You've got an output. You've got a drive button, so you can increase your saturation. And then the best part to me is this knob right here. It is a mix knob where you can dial back sort of a parallel type of compression or emulation you can dial in, so you don't have to go full on. And this works real good for you can get that sound that you want, and then you can dial back the amount of it so you can still hear your original track coming through. And then obviously you can see this knob right here called punish. It does exactly that. It completely punishes your audio. Anyway, I'm going to start out with a conservative level here, and I'm going to start driving it so we can hear what it does to the audio. You can hear what it's doing. And again, I can dial that back. I'm going to take this back up where I was originally. Play that again. Okay, this is without. That's full wet. So you can see I can level match here with this output knob, so that I'm making sure that what I'm hearing is I'm just not hearing it louder and saying, oh, that sounds better. I'm actually able to level match that and do an A/B to make sure that the sound that I'm getting through the Decapitator is truly making the effect that I'm trying to get by using this. So you can get that punish knob really could be something that you could use on a snare, or on pretty much anything that you want to just completely dirty up. All right. Next, I'm going to go through a popular plugin called Trash from Isotope. I'm going to go through some presets just to let you guys hear it, and I'm going to turn the level down because this is a very hot plugin. I apologize if this jumps out. And again, you've got this mix knob. This is huge. I love plugins that have mix knobs. It allows me to stay true to the tone that I originally recorded, which when I'm miking amps, cabinets, whatever, or vocalists, there's a reason why I'm putting my mics in a certain position, because I like the sound that I'm getting. But I also may want to add some saturation or character to my tone. And this mix knob allows me to have the best of both worlds. I can keep my original signal as well as dial in the amount of character that I want to add to the track. So let's say I like this chip tooth. I can start out dry. And slowly dial in the amount of the plugin that I want. That's another good plugin. You can have fun with this on pretty much any type of track. Fuzz, another very popular type of analog emulation that's being used today to emulate fuzz wahs from back in the 60s and 70s. This here, I'm not gonna show that today because that's really doesn't serve the purpose of what I'm trying to show. But I do want you guys to hear some fuzz emulation and what it can add. So that's another good plug. Again, you can use the wah with it. I'm just trying to show you the guys the fun. And this is a free plugin that comes with Pro Tools. So it's another good reason for me to show it to you today. You've got this plugin if you have Pro Tools. All right. Finally, for this guitar track, I'm going to show you guys the good old-fashioned tape saturation. This is one of my favorite ones. This is from Slate Digital, the virtual tape machine, and this it sounds good. Bottom line, whatever you put it on, this just adds that tape warmth that really has become the cornerstone of the emulation kind of movement. Everybody wants that tape saturation, or that authentic tape sound, and most people put this on their mix bus at the very end. You could put this on any track at any stage. Just be careful that you understand that this can add some kind of harmonic overtones that could build up over time and cause some issues. But I'm just saying, don't be scared to experiment with it. This is a great plugin. Not very, you're not hearing it quite as much as what I was using these other ones for, but the subtleness that it would add to a track is just excellent to me. Alright, next I'm going to move on to bass. This bass track was recorded direct in, so let's give it a listen real quick without anything on it. I'm going to lower it. So that's the bass signal. Let's add the Sound Toys Little Radiator. This is one of my favorites, a little preamp to give it a little dirt. And again, look at that mix knob, one of my favorites. So I'm going to dial it in. Beautiful. Good. All right, that little radiator can go a long way. You don't have to use a lot of it. You can be very conservative with it in the mix. Just add that little bit. So, I mean, you can get as nasty with this, or you can get just to add that little bit in the mix. Let's say I've got the guitar and the bass together. So it helps to define the bass tone a little bit there in the mix, which is another great aspect of adding saturation. It can get, if you've got a mix where you're finding it hard to distinguish certain instruments, saturation can be the plug-in that gets you that little bit of separation from track to track. It's always worth a try to throw a little saturation in, just in small doses. A little bit here, a little bit there can go a long way towards giving you some great separation from track to track. All right, let's continue down this path. We're going to use the Lo-Fi plugin, which this is another plugin that is included with Pro Tools. Again with the guitar. Let me A-B it real quick. All right, let's hear them together. You could see where this lo-fi could be useful on a dirty vocal. You want to get a real dirty, gritty. This degrades the quality. You can see right here my sample size. I've taken it down to 16-bit. So you can even go. You can go down. I think So you can go down to 2-bit. I mean, this is really going to make it sound raunchy. So you could really do some nasty things with this lo-fi plugin. All right. Now, going through the Fairchild on a bass is one of my favorite things. Most times when I have a DI bass, the Fairchild is the plugin that I'm running it through while I'm recording. So I love the Fairchild and the warmth that it adds. Again, you can put it on. You can put it on anything. I prefer it on bass. Love the Fairchild. Great stuff, man. All right. Now the FET compressor is another really good form of saturation. This is another soft tube plugin. This is worth taking a look at. This is great on guitar. I use it a lot on lead channels. for any kind of guitar solos. It works. It really helps add some separation, and it will definitely add a lot of power to maybe a puny. I don't want to say puny, but to a track that you're like, man, it's sort of lacking some oomph. The FET compressor really can help give you more of that power that you might have been lacking. So we got the FET. Now we can go with the Sans Amp Tech 21. PSA, this is another great plugin. This is a very in fact, I have the analog version of this foot pedal. So I use this when I play out live. This is a great plugin. You can use this on vocals, drums. You can maybe side chain with this, or use it in parallel mode. It does not have a mix knob, so if you wanted to blend this in, you would have to put it on a separate bus and then blend that in with a fader. Anyway, here's a little bit of what it can do. Now, let's say I was talking about wanting to run it in parallel to blend it. Let me spell that right. Sorry about that. All right. So here's my send out of my bass into this bass crunch, which I'm going to give it some just ultimate drive. I really want it to. I'm going to slowly blend this in. that's probably how I would use that in the studio if I was mixing. I would run the bass into this as my bass crunch, so I would still keep my clean DI bass, but I would also be able to add, and I can automate that. So if certain parts of the songs I want to have more crunch, like let's say the chorus, I can then increase the level of the send into that, so that aux bus, and really get some added character to that bass when more instrumentation is introduced. All right, let's move on to vocal now. One of my favorite things to do with a vocal is to just pass it through some form of analog emulation. In this case, I'm going to run it through Universal Audio's Pultec. This is a analog EQ that's been used for decades, and this is the default setting. And a lot of times, that's all I'll do is I'll run a piece of audio through this plugin in its default setting, just because of the what it does to your audio by passing through it. Let me isolate that vocal track.
Look at me, I am so completely absorbed and unaware of you. Look at me, I am so completely absorbed and unaware of you.
That's very subtle, but I'm telling you that there's something about that I like. And then obviously you can go in and you can boost and attenuate certain frequencies. The great part about the Pultec is you can boost and attenuate at the same time. So you're sort of able to get the best part out of that frequency range, and also remove anything that may be negative to your ear at the same time. It really is a very ingenious way that Pultec was able to work their magic with this plugin, or I should say the analog gear that this is emulating.
Look at me, I am so completely absorbed and unaware of you. Remember when our touch there meant so much to the both of us. Look at me, I am so completely absorbed and unaware of you. Remember when our touch there meant so.
And this is the legacy version of the Pultec EQ. If you go and you buy a UAD interface, whether it is one of their Thunderbolt or Firewire interfaces, the Apollo, or one of their cards, this plugin comes free with your initial registration of the device. It's the legacy version. I'll show you the full version of it later on another track. Either way, whether you're using the legacy or the full version, you still get that inherent characteristic that the Pultec original analog EQ would impart on passing audio through it. I just love that on vocal, running EQ through it. All right, another way to do this would be saturating through a console emulation. All right, and that's what I'm doing here with the Abbey Road's Red 17. This is a Waves plugin, but it does some awesome things to vocals. All right.
Look at me, I am so completely absorbed and unaware of you. Remember when our touch there meant so much to the both of us. Look at me, I am so completely absorbed and unaware of you. Remember when I touched them and
Now let's hear that with the other instruments in.
look at me, I am so completely.
There's no guitar there, it's just bass and vocal anyway.
Look at me, I am so completely absorbed and unaware of.
I love that. That's great. It's hard to find a way to do that while you're recording. I normally do. I wouldn't give the singer that sound. I would just maybe put a little reverb while they're singing. This would all be done in the way I like to work afterwards when I'm trying to create certain sonic sounds for certain sections of songs. Anyway, that Red 17 is a great plug-in to add some saturation to a vocal that you feel okay, I'm not really getting the vibe of the song there. And let me bring that up again real quick. I was using this gain knob here. This is really what was giving me that sort of that grit and that dirt. And notice the drive knob is all the way up. You can turn that back, lower your gain.
Look at me, I am so completely.
And then the vocal's clean. So you can add in as much as you want of that grit or as little as you want. And again, if you really do like the blending, you could put this on a bus, route your vocal to it, and then slowly blend it in so you still keep your initial vocal, but also add in some of this console saturation. Let's bring in the Devil Lock. This is a Soundtoy plugin, and this is their audio level destroyer, and it is exactly that. It destroys your audio.
Look at me, I
Again,
am
it's got a big
so
knob,
completely
which I do
absorbed
like.
and unaware of you. Remember when I touched them and so much to the both of us.
So with a plugin like this, you wouldn't need to create that extra bus. You still could. You could turn the mix all the way up, put this plugin on an aux bus, and then send signals into it. But again, you can do it here with the mix knob, so you really don't need to do that. I mean, either way, whatever works best for you. This is another great plugin to add that awesome saturation onto a track that you may feel lacks a little of personality. Here's that lo-fi plugin again.
Look at me, I am so completely absorbed.
Got it down to 19 back, get real gritty with it.
Of you. Remember when I touched them and so much to the both of us.
So you can really do some cool things with the lo-fi plugin. I use it on stuff every once in a while. I don't go crazy with it. I like to sometimes use it on a bus and then blend it in just to give a little bit of hair to a track. But anyway, again, it's all about preference. Drums. First thing I'm going to throw in is the JST Transify plugin on the drum bus, or actually on the drum track. This is the stereo mix of the drums. You hear the ring, I'm getting out of that snare by increasing the attack and the sustain on the low mid. So you can do Transify is really good on drum. It's made for drums, so it's a great plug-in to throw in on your drums. Sort of bring out some transients. You're not really satisfied with how hard your snare's hitting. Ideally, you would use that on separate tracks. Again, I'm trying to be as quick as I can. I know this is a long video already, but I'm trying to go through as many different saturation plugins as I can. Here's the Abbey Road again. This is the 37-51, and this is going to add a little bit of snare fizz. Let's put that in the mix. You can hear how that sounds when, you know, playing along other instruments. I mean, that definitely adds a little bit of character there. And I showed you earlier, you can dial that back by lowering the drive. The gain is at 6, so you could bring that down, but the drive is really what is giving it that fizz, as it's called here in the preset. And again, I would use this on individual tracks, not the stereo mix down. All right, this is the Metric Halo channel strip. This is a magnificent plugin. This does things to audio that other things just can't touch. I mean, this is the Swiss Army knife of plugins. You could use this in parallel mode, where you would put this on a bus, send to it what you want to send to it, and then blend it in. In this case, this is just right on the drum track. But I'm gonna let you hear it before and after, and then you can hear kind of what it does. This really, you could put this on every track of your mix, and it'll make your mix sound magnificent. But it can also destroy a mix if not used properly. In this instance, I'm using the compression and the EQ off of it, and let's give it a listen. I'm gonna just have the drums on here. We're adding 4 dB at 2.5K. We're cutting 5 at 4, so the mids are being pulled out. A full 5 dB. That's, I mean, you can go less. You turn it off. And you can add as much, take away as much as you want. These bands can be changed depending on what you want to do there. We're adding another 5 dB at 80 hertz. In the mix. All right. Now, in the traditional sense, this wouldn't be considered saturation, but this goes back to the point I was making earlier. All digital plugins, in a way, are a way to emulate something that was originally an analog device. In some cases, anytime you go to a point of too much, you're saturating it, and in that you can even saturate with the channel strip, is what I'm trying to explain. I'm sorry if my words aren't coming across quite the way I see it in my mind, but that's kind of the what I'm trying to explain. Anything, too much of anything causes saturation. All right. This is the legacy version of the Pultec Pro. And I'm just going to show you again, passing audio through the Pultec stuff really is magical. And then now with it in. It's so subtle, but it's so beautiful. The kick, the snare, the hi-hats, everything really just, it gets warmer. It gets less harsh. It gets more precise. It cleans. It actually cleans the drums up in a very nice musical way. I love that plugin on just about anything. And then again, our old friend, the virtual tape machine from Stephen Slate. So in ideal cases, I would use them in tandem. The Pultec and the tape machine. Before and then after. In the mix. It's great stuff. When you could do little things like that, they're just it's not big moves you're making, but you're making it sound more real in a way. These were sample drums. That was not a live drummer that came in and recorded. That's pulled off of I do believe that was either Stephen Slate drums. That may have been I think it was Stephen Slate drums is what that was. Either way, it can work great wonders on sample drums. Now Stephen Slate's got some of the best samples because it was actually live drums that were used, but still wasn't recorded in the studio here. It wasn't passing through my stuff, so it's great to be able to add these things afterwards. You really don't have to, but I mean it's a matter of preference. Now we're going to go to the mix bus. I'm going to first pull up one of the EQs off of T-Rax's suite. This was used to emulate the API 550 EQ off of the console. So again, this is a great way to affect the entire mix with saturation emulation. Now this is the same concept I've been doing earlier with the Pultec, where I'm just passing audio through it. All the settings are in their default state, so I'm not boosting or cutting anything. All I'm doing is allowing my entire mix to run through into the emulated plugin. That's great stuff. I'm going to do it again now with the Pultec Pro. Same thing, default settings, just running audio through it. it just adds that little bit of extra bite to the guitar, the snare. It jumps out a little bit more out of the mix. And again, not doing anything. And you can go in and you can dial in what some adjustments you'd like to make. But just the fact that you can pass audio through these plug-in emulations really in a very musical way. All right, let's bring up the Fairchild. This is the 670. I used the 660 on the bass earlier. This is the 670. This is another, doing the same thing, just letting audio pass through it. That needle's barely moving. And then if you really wanted to do a little bit, and get this has the mix knob, so if you wanted to use this in parallel, you could go to 50%. So you just would be able to blend in a little bit of this emulation. All right. The next two plugins are Steven Slate plugins. One of them is the Virtual Mix Rack, of which I'll be showing you the Virtual Mix Bus. This again is using console emulation, but again that is a form of saturation as well. Very nice. Steven Slate, they've done Slate Digital. They've done an awesome job of adding some great plugins to my studio. Some of the stuff that they've added, I use on absolutely every mix, every track. I don't. It's like Steven Slate's plugins are like the American Express of my studio. I don't mix without it. So. I just showed you these two today just sort of to stay in the context of the saturation theme of the video. But in most cases, two of my favorites are the Custom EQ and any one of their compressors. The 116, the FG 116, the black, the red 401. These are all these are go-tos for me. I love using them on my mixes. All right, let's go finally the VTM on your mix bus. I put this on every mix. Absorbed and unaware of you. Remember when our touch there meant so much to the both of us. So you can hear, you could go too far with it. when I pushed that virtual drive to 46 dB, you could hear that oversaturation that was we were getting on the bass. So these plugins can do it all. You can get as nasty as you want. You can get as clean as you want. You can try to get as outside of what normal people would like to hear you. I mean, you could push things to a point where the mix is literally just feels like it's ready to fall apart, or you could just dial in for just analog warmth, all with some plugins that were made to give you the sound like you were recording in some of the top studios in the world. Saturation can really be a great addition to a mix. It can also be the reason that a mix falls apart. I always suggest A/Bing before and after other plugins. In other words, listen to what saturation how would affect an EQ move you made earlier in your mix. Saturation is going to introduce a lot of harmonic overtones, which in other words, you might want to instantiate an EQ after some saturation, just to sort of reel in some of what it's doing. Only because we can, in digital, we can really go too far with some things, and we would have negative consequences. In the analog realm, you can go too far, but you really you have a lot more leeway in the analog mixing in the analog realm. So just I always caution to be careful that you don't overdo it. Always be kind to your mix. Know that you want your mix to sound. You want to be what you're adding to your mix. You want it to be that you're adding to it. You're not necessarily putting something on and it's taking away from the mix. There was a couple things I did here today that absolutely I would not do. I just wanted to show you guys saturation. It was taking away from the quality of my mix. You could hear it right there at the end in the VMR. When I had this virtual drive up to 46 dB, I did not like what that did to my entire mix. That's not to say I wouldn't have liked having that on my bass track and just having it being pushed, but it was sort of it was adding too much to the entire mix. So anyway, I just want you guys to know saturation is one of the great ways that we can make our mixes sound not as digital, and in most cases that is a great thing. If you have any questions you'd like to hear or see me do any other videos, please leave a comment in this video or email me bbuck822@gmail.com. If you found anything that I showed here to you today useful, please like and subscribe to this video. Subscribe to my channel. If you would be so kind, I have PayPal for any kind of monetary donations you would like to make. That also is bbuck822@gmail.com. That is my PayPal email. I'm not saying you have to, but I mean, if you found this useful and you have a couple extra dollars or whatever that you would like to share with me, that would be great. It'd be much appreciated. It helps me keep doing these videos, and also buying new plugins as they come out so that I can show them to you guys before you make the expense. Anyway, I really appreciate everyone's support to my channel. I'll continue to crunch out and I'll get videos to you guys as soon as I can. Thank you very much and have a great day.